it's Tara, and it's time for Sunday Reads. So this week I read two books. I read Kazuo Ishiguro's The Buried Giant and Hiroshi Sakurazaka's The Slum Online. The Buried Giant is Kazuo Ishiguro's most recent publication, and there were a lot of mixed reviews about it, so I wasn't sure when I went into it what to expect. I did watch SFF 180's review on it, so I was a little bit prepared, but The Buried Giant follows the story of an older couple who live in a society in the Middle Ages, set like right maybe a generation after King Arthur has passed away. And in the society, there's this mist that comes over the land that has made everybody forget the past, and it kind of stops them from building long-term memories. So one day this couple decides that they want to go find their son in the next village over, and they plan a trip and they make this journey to find their son. And the story is, like, it has a discernible plot, which is great, but the way it goes about following the plot is very meandering, and it's something I saw in Never Let Me Go when I read that. Kazuo Ishiguro has a way of, like, writing in a way a person would think, not like stream of consciousness necessarily, but just sort of following thoughts as they come. And in some ways it's good because it's really easy to connect to what's going on. In other ways it's not very much like a story. It's more like you're talking to someone on a lazy day and they're recounting this thing to you. It's not like reading a novel so much. And one other thing I noticed is that I don't know why he was doing this so much in the book, but even like the really action-packed scenes, he would write it as though it were a normal thing happening. For example, I really want to give you an example, but I think it might spoil what's coming. So suffice it to say that he makes an action sound like a regular movement and then goes back and says, you know, what really happened. But it just serves to like take all of the impetus out of an action that should be huge. And I think part of that is really boring, but part of it is kind of very much sticking to what he's doing with the whole story, which is sort of taking the excitement out of life, which I wonder whether that has something to do with the mist and, you know, the removal of long-term memories and, you know, the lack of passion that goes with not having any sort of history. So reading through this was really trying because it was a boring read. I will straight out say that it was a boring read, but it's one of those books that looking back on it, it has a lot to make you think. So I don't at all regret reading it. It was just a little bit difficult to get through. The other book was Slum Online, which I really enjoyed. It was published in 2005 and it's set in about the same era, and it's about a young man, Etsuro, who is engaged in a MMORPG. It's a massively multiplayer online role-playing game for those of you who don't play them. And he plays, it's a fighting game, kind of like Mortal Kombat, but set in this virtual world. It has a lot to talk about virtual life having an impact on real life or not, and the fine line between obsession and, you know, hobby and things like that. And as someone who has been addicted to MMORPG and who has been part of the gaming culture, I could really identify with some of the things that were going on in there. And it's strangely philosophical for a book about video games. So yeah, I found it to be really enjoyable. It was somewhat boring in that he has fight scenes, and the fight scenes are like, it's like watching someone describe Street Fighter like through a strategy guide and reading it over and over and over. So I will definitely say that I skimmed those parts. But it's a short read. It's only like 210 pages, even with the little bonus at the end, which was added for the English version only. But I actually didn't like the bonus stuff. I much preferred it ending where it did, but it was fine. So yeah, I enjoyed that one, and I will probably maybe recommend it to my brother, who is also, we played World of Warcraft together and Star Wars Galaxies and, you know, other things. I also read two short stories this week. The first was Covenant by Elizabeth Bear, which is about a man who was a serial killer, and he received, when he was caught, he had the option to receive, I don't remember what they call it, but it's sort of a mental neuro restructuring so that it changes your behaviors and your desires to make you more in line with the normal person in society. It's part of a short story collection called Hieroglyph Future Stories and Visions for a Better Future. And in the Hieroglyph, they sort of discuss, well, it says, the ethical and practical aspects of hacking the human mind, this particular story, and it discusses neuroplasticity and things like that. So basically ethical values, and I thought the story really did well with struggling with the impact of changing someone's mind, and never really draws a clear line between, you know, whether it is good or whether it isn't good or natural or something like that. Like, obviously we don't want people murdered, so there is always that underlying feeling that, yes, of course, saving lives is the most important thing, but there's also that internal struggle with the person that sort of makes you think about that as well. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this story, and I will probably read it again maybe next month or something like that after I've had a little time away from it, because I think it's fairly relevant to the way society is going and things like that. So yeah. The other short story I read was also in Hieroglyph. I found them totally differently. I follow Cory, Doctorow on Twitter, and he posts all of his stories and his novels and short stories are like Creative Commons, so he always puts those out. And he wrote one called, oh yes, The Man Who Sold the Moon, which is about environmentalism, and I don't know, it's kind of hard to pin this one down. It was really an interesting read, incredibly long, and it felt like a long read. So basically this guy's diagnosed with cancer, and he, because of that, makes an acquaintance with a man who's like a burner, part of this cult sort of thing that goes to, they believe in, you know, taking care of everyone but leaving as little of an imprint behind as possible. Very environmental, although they do a whole bunch of drugs. And basically it's about, you know, being good to yourself and being good to other people. And he gets pulled into this, and there gets to be this giant project that goes on and completely changes their lives. And it's very interesting because there's no real, like, there's a conclusion to the story, but it's not a satisfying conclusion, which I think is actually nice because it fits in with that sort of gray area on ethicality and morality and environmentalism and things like that. So I thought it dealt with a lot of really interesting topics in a sort of light-handed way that allows you to think about it. So yeah, I might recommend it. I really like Cory Doctorow's stuff. Sometimes it's a little too detailed in places, but for the most part, I enjoyed it. So yes, that is what I read last week, and I also started Hot Lead, Cold Iron by Ari Marmel, which is a noir 1930s pulp fiction style PI story with fae, and I've only just gotten into it, but that language is a lot to get used to. It's like watching one of those black and white PI films, and something about, like, when it's a film you can easily immerse yourself in it and it doesn't come off as sounding strange, maybe because it's black and white, but when I read the book I'm like, this feels a little bit forced, and maybe that's a flaw on the author's part, or maybe it's just too foreign for me. I'm not really sure, but I'll see how I feel as that goes on. And after that, I have no idea what's going to come next. Whatever happens. Yesterday I went on like a 9-kilometer walk around Tokyo. I went to the Tsukiji fish market area, and not in the morning because I don't wake up early enough for that, and walked over to the Odaiba area, and it was a gorgeous day, and we ran into a festival along the way at this crazy harumi, some sort of port for boats. I don't know much about it, but it was really weird architecture, but kind of cool. It was like a fun house, and yeah, it was like a fun house. There were all these little features that if you went around a corner, you would sort of see this, like there was a red hoop in an alcove. I don't know what it was doing there, but stuff like that. So that was really neat. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And today I'm going to go to karaoke, and then I'm going to watch some Star Wars with a friend, the friend I went to the exhibit with. Yeah. So, interesting, fun weekend. Maybe a little busier than I am used to, or like I haven't caught up with everybody's videos, but I will do my best. So anyway, if anything is happening as usual, please let me know how you've been, how your week was, and if you have any exciting plans for this week. And if you're reading anything good, what are you reading? Other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful week, and until next time.